Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, what we're doing is we're going through this book here. It is Book of Creation by Gregory James Gardner Jr. In the previous chapter, a little recap before we do that. If you haven't seen my previous video, there's a link to it somewhere on the screen here, and you can go back and watch that. And once you're caught up, you can join us here in chapter 2. So to recap for those that have already been with us, we were introduced to Azra, and he met a little kitten in his prison cell, and he helped the kitten escape his prison cell. And he fell down the shaft and almost killed himself, and he was glad that he didn't. So, get a little swig of water here to wet my whistle. I've got the catnip right here. Hold on. She's here, ladies and gentlemen. She's here. Let's see if we can, not smack her in the face while I open up the catnip. We'll just leave that open for her to bury her face in. Chapter 2, The Planet of Nocturne. The year is 1065 on the nocturnal calendar, and we are in the present. Frosty and quiet, the tunnel breathed deeply with the echo of the outside wind, as the old man cautiously made his way along. Every so often, he would stop and clutch at his satchel tightly with his loosely wrapped, bony fingers and look around to make sure the path ahead remained safe. The rags he bundled himself in kept the cold at bay, though looked like they did anything but, as they were filled with holes and tattered beyond repair. "It's been so long," he said to the empty spaces with a billowing breath. "But, place looks familiar." He looked around again as he moved ahead. "She needs to know." In years past, Mathis had wandered these caverns without a care. Younger and faster, he could always outrun the dangers. Be it an avalanche or a stampede of woolly rams, he had ways of escape that left many scratching their heads in wonder. Even now, his head spun with all sorts of ways to exit the cave. An ear-splitting roar shattered the silence. He leapt out of his skin and ran as fast as he could. Despite his age, he remained agile and quick. But the creature seemed just as nimble and kept pace behind him. With a frantic scramble, Mathis scurried through the icy straits and slipped his way around the uneven curves. As the last turn opened to the outside, he could see the light tower of Aliyah Otten beaming brightly. The beast bashed him good as it hurled into the light, and his satchel flew into a nearby snowbank. As he crashed to the ground, a hot snarl warmed his right shoulder, and a gnashing chomp bit down in the snowbank next to him. Massive, long, scaled, with a crown of violet feathers that plumed from its head and trailed down its spine. "Crowned worm!" He scrambled backwards. Mathis could see his chances of getting out of this had just changed. The echo of the worm's roar climbed up the crags and fissures of the mountainside and bounced around, driven up the glowing walls of Aliyah Otten to become lost in the whipping winds that howled across the tower's balconies. The black of the starless sky sat heavily above, a stark backdrop to the light tower, one of the Southern Kingdom's only sources of light. You like that, darling? Are you enjoying the mint? It's mint. If there's any questions about what she's got her face buried in, it's mint. That's all it is. She loves it. She loves it. Continuing on. Talia, adorned in thick furs, stood on the uppermost balcony where icicles and tufts of snowdrift hung over the side. With her back to the beaming stone of light, yet with no shadow cast in front of her, she remained lost in thought as she stared out at the eastern moonrise. How did I ever get here? A gust of wind peeled back her hood to reveal a blanket of dark brown hair over porcelain skin, and as she turned away from the gust to correct her garment, a ghost of light followed like an after-image. Time to go inside, she thought. Light, lapis-colored eyes stared back in the warm light through the vanity mirror as she combed through her thick hair with long and deliberate strokes. Still mostly dressed for her duties, Talia combed and combed, always going through the same ritual every couple of days when she finally had time to herself. At her nape, the slight hint of a tattoo-like pattern peered out from beneath her hairline and disappeared down her back into her vestments. The markings had been there for so long as she could remember, but not one person could ever tell her what they were. At best guess, they were tattoos given to her as an infant, but Talia had no idea why she was marked this way. She set the comb down and shrugged it all away as she made her way to her bed, disrobing a garment at a time to leave a trail from one place to another. She climbed in, slipped beneath the covers, and set her head down to enjoy the still of the night. One lady makes her exit in the book, another lady makes her exit in real life. It's interesting. I'm going to pause here. If you watched the first video, you may have noticed that I got clawed in the back by that very cat right there, at the same time that I'm reading about Azra and the cat wrestling around, getting clawed and gnawed. It's interesting. She's got a way with things. She's got a sense about things. Maybe I'm just making that up. Continuing. She climbed in, slipped beneath the covers, and set her head down to enjoy the still of the night. The sedated light of the chamber was a comfort after the day because those late hours of the night belonged to her and her alone. She had nothing to which she must attend, save for herself, and no one to chase after her anymore, as she thought. It was a pleasant thought. Her peace, quiet, and relaxation quickly shattered at the sound of her heavy chambered doors as they crashed open to thrash against the stone. She jumped from her bed, half naked, as the ghost of light followed to cover her up. While she pulled her sheets along to wrap around herself, she managed to keep her thick mane out of her face, and all of it with a certain finesse. Confusion turned to wonder as a familiar but bearded and frantic face appeared in the light. Mathis? The light that surrounded her grew brighter. Maiden Talia! You've returned! I thought you were lost, or even dead. She looked him over. You look dead. You even look dead. No, maiden. He rushed up to embrace her by the shoulders in a troubled grip. Talia tried to hide a wince at his acrid odor. We don't have much time. If we don't get going quickly, life as we know it may be done for. What do you mean? Not now, he said. Quickly, get what you need for at least a week's travel. We need to get going. Now wait just a minute, Mathis. She freed herself from his grip, and the light evaporated from his hand. She walked to the vanity to sit. You've been gone almost 10 years, and now you return in the middle of the night with frantic ramblings of the end of the world, trying to drag me out of here like a lunatic. And you, forgive me for saying, but you did not exactly leave on the best of terms. If I'm to trust that you have simply gone mad, then you have to do some explaining right now. With the authority of her position as Azek Maiden, she sat noble and bright while wrapped in nothing more than silken sheets. The haggard old man looked at his surroundings and calmed down. I'm sorry, maiden, but what I've discovered brought me to this urgency. He looked around again. Though, I suppose I can slow down now. He caught his breath and sat down heavily in a comfortable chair. Mathis, forgive me, but you look terrible. She paused a moment. You smell worse. The ragged man looked himself down with a sniff and a wince. I suppose I do. What in the world have you been through, old friend? Exactly that. He jumped forward in the chair, excited. I've traveled cross Nocturne, and oh, Talia, the story I have for you. Well, she said with a polite yawn and a small stretch. I'm all ears. There's so much. I couldn't possibly tell it all to you right now. We need to be going. Not until you tell me why I need to pick up and leave my duties as Azek Maiden of Elia Otten. Old friend or not, you need to tell me what this is about. Again, he sat back and caught his breath. I don't know how else to say this, but the Creator's in trouble, and by a fluke of nature, we can help him. Again, he sat forward. The Creator? Azraelun? You mean the moon? Taya seemed a little confused. It sits in the sky as we speak. Surely you've seen it on your way here. No, maiden, he shook his head. Not the moon. The Creator. Taya remained still and looked at Mathis blankly, unsure of what to make of him. She turned to the mirror of the vanity and thought for a moment. Go on, she said to humor him. The expedition Rias Ra sent us on, you remember it? Of course. You should see the map that was made from all the correspondences during the expeditionary effort. But when the letters stopped arriving from your group, and when none of you returned, we'd finally thought you dead. We were supposed to find safe passage to the craters and also map the new landscapes of the north, so we didn't expect to be back for years, at least. I know. But nearly 10 years? What happened out there? Mathis reached into the satchel at his side, pulled out a bundle of cloth, and reached out for Talia to take the item. Talia looked at him quizzically before she leaned out to take the bundle. The fold of the wrap fell away to reveal a crystal shard, and she looked back to Mathis, even more puzzled. What's this? Mathis leaned forward with a glimmer in his eyes. This is going to help us save the world. How is this going to save the world? Maiden, there's so much I have to tell you before I can get to that. I need you to trust me. We must get going before daylight at least. I promise you, you'll start to understand why as we go. He looked her in the eyes. I need you to trust me as you once did. I know this is all too sudden, but you have to trust me. Taya sat back and thought for a moment or two as she looked back and forth between Mathis and the shard. The Creator? In trouble? He's mad. She looked at her reflection. But I am an Azek, guardian of the light of creation. Mad or not, I must see to this claim myself. What should I pack for? Mathis smiled widely. Well, that's part of my story in coming here and why I'm in such dire state. The crowned worm caught my scent as I was coming down the mountain face. He looked into the flame of one of the candles nearby. Did all I could to avoid him. He stopped, but when the silence became uncomfortable, he started up again. It got me. What do you mean it got you? You're alive. If it had gotten you, there'd be nothing left. Mathis just stared into the flame. Swallowed me whole, he said plainly. Held my breath as long as I could as I crawled my way through. You did what? He nodded, never looking away from the flame. I don't know if I blacked out or what, but soon I realized that I lay breathing on the ground with the worm slithering away down the tunnel. Taya just looked at him in shock. She took a quick glance at her shoulders with a whiff of the rancid odor as it wafted up from her skin, and her eyes widened. I was still steaming, he finished, resignation in his voice. Taya left modesty behind with her sheets as she shot out of the chair and made a straight line for the water basin to start scrubbing herself. The light quickly caught up and shimmered thickly around the areas of her body that she did not want anyone to see. Mathis, she exclaimed, I insist you wash up at once. Mathis averted his eyes from seeing Taya and the buff as he clutched to his satchel. Thankfully, it didn't need this. He patted the bundle while Taya was distracted. Taya spent the next hour or so wrapping up her hands and feet and shoulders and torso with soft, thick cotton bandages. She slipped into a tightly fitted bodysuit that was a patchwork of grays and browns and covered all over with small pockets. She filled the pockets with various items, darts and marbles, and metal stars within quick reach of one another. She also slipped brass studs into the folds of her hand wraps. Wow, this is wordy, isn't it? She also slipped brass studs into the folds of her hand wraps along her knuckles. In the folds of her palms, she slipped in a slim, curved rod with hooked barbs, and neatly covered the hooks with the wraps. Mathis walked out of the washroom and into view just as Talia finished up with a pair of boots. With a look at what she wore, he asked, What's with all the gear? There are places my powers have no effect. Strange places. You say there's a crowned worm out there, and that means the rest of the worms have come out early this season too, patrolling their land. So I'll need my physical skill if we happen to run into one on their territory, or worse, in a strange place. You don't mean to actually try and fight a worm, do you? I hope I won't have to. She threw a wolf hide over her back. I think I'm ready to go. Mathis coughed while holding another bundle of wolf fur around his waist as he stood half naked in the middle of the cold chamber. Oh, Talia turned to look at him. Right, you need new clothing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's where I'm going to stop. I'm having some trouble speaking today. So I'm going to take a break from this. And hopefully I'll pick it up later. If I don't pick it up later, then this is going to be the end of the video. And I will make a part 2 of it to come later this week instead of Monday. I'm going to try and stick to the Monday format for each chapter. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Luna has since... Where is she? No, she's not there. She's probably back inside. Thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next time.